World Financial Group offers entrepreneurs from all backgrounds the opportunity to start their own business on a level playing field. Dr. Yana Woodhouse, receiving the WCM Wall Street Pioneer Award by the United Black Wall Street of America, Inc., is one of those entrepreneurs.
I see WFG and TFA as a place where African Americans with an entrepreneurial mindset can flourish. And the bonus, we help families and serve the communities across the country.
To learn more about us, go to worldfinancialgroup.com.
We are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Good afternoon. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, the Art of War. I hope all is well with everyone. This is an interesting time that we are living in now. There are two major events that's taking place in April, which is the month that we appreciate jazz. So one of my guests today will be Dekota Pippins, who is in the middle of the first annual late night jazz festival that's been going on. Started last Friday, and it's going on for a while. It's a wonderful event. 10 days, 17 venues, 35 events. And I think there's over 100 musicians involved now. So it's a major economic development initiative. We're also celebrating, many of us, Code 420. That's the day, April the 20th, that has been for years the calling cry for the legalization of cannabis. And my guest today is a sister that I've had the pleasure of talking with for many years, who is, when you go to her site, Let's Talk Cannabis, whatever you need to know, she knows. And she has been an expert, and I'm trying to talk her into hosting an economic development opportunity with the Harlem Tourism Board by creating an education program where people can understand the benefits of cannabis, seniors or what have you, so that we'll be able to really understand that this is an economic development opportunity for all of us. We just have to get past the misinformation. So that's what we have in store for you. So ladies, first, I'd like to first introduce Leslie Stone. the founder and CEO of Let's Talk Cannabis, among many other things. How are you doing, Leslie?
I'm doing fine, Tony. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a
And I would
pleasure.
also, Leslie, I want to, because I want you to stay with me and you'll be here, but I know Dekota has to leave. So I want to introduce Dekota to come on for a moment, who you know very well,
Of course.
in the time that he has, just to talk a little bit about the Jazz Festival. And of course, Leslie, you've been around for a while, so you can, be a part of that. But I want that the second part of the show is to focus on some of the things that we're talking about with cannabis.
Okay, understood.
So Dekota Pippins, my brother.
Hey, man, Tony Rogers. Thanks for inviting me on the show, man.
Well, you're in the middle of this jazz festival, which I just think is wonderful. I mean, the idea that there's no more jazz in Harlem, or you can't find jazz in Harlem, well, that puts that to rest, and it's an economic development program, because as I was going around on Friday and some of the other nights, I just saw a lot of people. None of them didn't always look like us, and we talked about that. When we talk about jazz and blues, we might not be on top of it, but others do. But the education and reason why you're here now, we need to re-educate everybody. The same with cannabis. We want to make sure, because these are economic development opportunities that in some cases we had to slide to the back when that was being talked about, jazz and because jazz and cannabis, that was certain groups of people and all of that stuff. But the world didn't think that way. I think only we thought that way. And so I'm glad to have you both on. But please talk a little bit with your time about the festival.
Well, yeah, thank you. And thank you, Leslie. One of the reasons I want to go first, I don't want to go behind you because,
She is a bad sister.
But yeah, Tony, they're both economic engines. Music has always been one of our most powerful economic engines, which is why it's been under so much attack. But let me talk a little bit about what we're doing now at the Harlem Jazz Club Revival. The Harlem Jazz Club Revival. It's a 10-day event. This is the first annual event. We were gratified that 18 Harlem venues. We were excited about that part of it. We have over 40 events and over 100 musicians and some very, very special nights. We started on the 15th and on the 14th, April 14th, and we go to the 23rd. And the first nights have just been unbelievable. So I want to give a shout out. Let me get rid of this phone in the back. Excuse me 1 second. For giving me the opportunity to talk about it. I guess I should also say a little bit about me.
That might be helpful.
Who are you?
My name is Dekota Pippins. I'm president of Harlem Late Night Jazz Incorporated, which is a Harlem-based organization. Eight years old now.
Everybody's calling you because you're doing a festival.
I'm supposed to be at an event
right.
currently. So that was Reggie Workman, by the way, that I just hung up on. And Reggie has an octet coming to an event tonight following my presentation. But let me get back on task. I'm president of Harlem Late Night Jazz Incorporated, which is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to keep live music alive right here in Harlem where it belongs.
Reggie,
right
Leslie.
Man in demand.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's
mean,
the
you're running a
great
festival.
NEA award winner Reggie Workman, right? So what do you do when he calls you? But it's a 10-day festival, ends April 23rd, and over 100 musicians, Grammy Award winners, and most of them are free. One of the things that we really wanted was to make it available to the people here in Harlem. We talked about the number of tourists and Europeans and Asians that fill our venues. And that's good. We don't mind that. That brings economic development. But we also want Harlemites in there enjoying their culture. And let me say, I'm a professor, right? So I talk a lot. But let me say one thing. Tonight, we're having a presentation at the New Amsterdam Music Association. And for those of you who don't know, it's the oldest association in the United States for Black musicians. It was founded in 1904 by the likes of James Reese Europe, Hubie Blake, Fats Waller. People like John Coltrane have lived there. It's been in its current location for over 100 years. Tonight, I am making a jazz history tree presentation based upon my website, jazzhistorytree.com, which is an interactive website that traces the history of our music, the music of Black Americans, all the way back pre-1619 to the seeds are in Africa, and the African-American roots, of course, are work songs, Negro spirituals, and blues. But the tree comes all the way up to today. There are over 34 genres covered, over 100 videos loaded. And besides being an important, I think, historical view of our music, it's an entertainment and an educational tool that I'm proud to say being used in a number of universities and K through 12 schools. So that presentation is taking place tonight. Reggie Workman is a big supporter of it. My presentation is from 7:30 to 9. Following that, there will be an 8-piece octet of students under the tutelage of Reggie Workman. They're graduating from the new school, and he's bringing his octet, and I know they're going to do periods, and if Reggie's involved, the music's going to be unbelievable.
So, what's the address?
Yes, it's 107 West 130th Street. 107 West 130th Street. For you Harlemites, that's between 7th Avenue and Lenox, or Adam Clayton Powell and Lenox Avenue, closer to Lenox. The history tree presentation and discussion, by the way, that starts at 7:30, and the band hits at 9 o'clock.
Do you have to make reservations?
No, you don't. And it's kind of first come, first serve.
First come, first serve, like the old days.
I gotta say this also, since we're talking about the New Amsterdam Music Association. Tomorrow, same location, we're having what we call the Masters Jam of the Century. We're going to take a step back to the past. We have 2 bands there going from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. They don't do late night anymore in Harlem, but we're doing late night. We have the Frank Lacey Band, the Ray Blue Quartet, and 25 master musicians have signed up to come and jam like it used to be. And so I want the world to know the backyard will be open because we're going to need it.
Yeah, you sure will.
So I wanted to give a shout out about that. And then one more shout out. Go to our website, Harlem Late Night Jazz. Harlem Late Night harlemjazz.org, and click on, you'll see opportunity to click on the calendar for the Harlem Jazz Club Revival, and you'll see all 10 days, all 40 events laid out for you. And with that, thank you, Tony, for giving me a chance to get all that out.
Well, I know that you're running, and as a great segue into my good friend Leslie Stone, April 20th is Cold 420.
Just 420. Just 420.
I'm sorry to jump in. Can I say something about that? By the way, Leslie, I'm going to see you just before she takes over, because in honor of 420, we have 5 events, Leslie. 5 events on 420,
and the reggae event is going to be hopping, I'm sure.
Yeah. So
wait, hold on. Let's talk about that. Let's get that out there to the people. We need to know about that, all my 420 enthusiasts. So we have tomorrow. You're going to have a couple of sets dedicated to 420, or
well, we have 5 events. They're not just dedicated to 420, but we have 5 events
on that day.
Online. I could run them down but I don't want to.
Well, no, Tony, do you got time to go over his events so people can know?
If real quick. Yeah, I mean, I know he was running, but
no. This will work.
And I'll just quickly interject, Dekota, while you're looking that up. I just want to commend you, because as a long-standing friend, I want to commend you on the launch of the jazz tree, the jazz history tree, because I know that was his pet project that he had been working on, something that he was very passionate about, that he wanted to bring this knowledge and information that is so critical to the history of Black music and where that foundation really came from. So hats off to you, Dekota, and all of your hard work and efforts, and may it give us and you what it's intended to do. Bless
and
you.
I'm sure that it will, because go ahead.
Thank you.
I know you're running, but give the events. I know the one that caught my eye is the reggae event. That's going to be at
the porch.
At the porch, St. Nicholas Avenue. I mean, a reggae event on 420 should be interesting.
But that's not all. That's all.
It's all about cool vibes.
The vibe should be interesting.
Yeah, it goes with salsa and jazz too. Cannabis and music and jazz go together.
I understand.
Starting on Thursday from 2 to 4, the National Jazz Museum in Harlem. Jerry Eastman. Jerry Eastman is a great all-time master on the guitar, and that's an afternoon event. And then from 7 to 11 at a new spot on Lenox called Club Harlem, we're having a trumpet summit. We call it the Kind of Blues Trumpet Summit. Is led by the gifted Gifton Gellin Quartet. He's a youngster that's played down at Lincoln Center the other day. He's tremendous. And a host of trumpeters. And then following that, the reggae at the porch, Louis Atlas and the All World Band. And then there's a new spot. You won't know about this new spot, Leslie, everybody else. It's called the Underground.
Oh,
it's the most beautiful spot in Harlem. I'm not kidding. It's 246 Malcolm X. That's between 120, 123rd.
It's really home to Harlem. That's where it is. I mean, that's Maria Granville. Actually,
that's right.
HTB is having an event there on May 19th. But
the
Underground is going to make that happen.
The Underground is that's exactly right. That's the down, the ground floor spot headed by Mark Austin, who is Tony. So I'm preaching to the choir. But following that, the Underground, we got a late night set, salsa. It's salsa and jazz. It's 9 to 1 a.m. at a new spot called Bird in Hand, 146 in Broadway. And thank you, Leslie, for giving me a chance to run that down.
No, thank you.
Boy.
Listen,
And that's just, and then you got a number about what 4 more days after that. So I know.
Yeah. We go to Sunday. We go, and Sunday is the biggest day. Sunday, April 23rd.
And let me just tell you, folks, everybody out there, I've hung out with this fella, Dekota. He knows how to party. He knows how to party. Let me tell you, there's no faking in his music genre. He is the man of jazz when it comes to Harlem Jazz Nights.
Thank you for that.
So listen, I'm going to try to get to your piece today, this evening. But of course, I'm going to be seeing you. I was either right before you or right after you throughout the different events that took place so far. So congratulations, brother. This is the beginning.
Dekota.
And this is the beginning of a whole new
about cannabis too later.
Okay.
Right. And yeah, because you're no stranger to the matter of fact, you and Leslie was doing some partnership stuff with the cannabis thing. So but
we're big supporters and believers in one another. We're big supporters and believers in one another.
And you know, with the governor's new initiative to attract blacks to New York State, you know, Harlem is going to be on the front end of that, which is why the GoHarlem.org site to have all of this stuff on it. You know, after talking with a few, I'm even thinking about having a section in the GoHarlem.org site for late night entertainment. That
you
know, be in partnership with
not like it used to be.
Jazz. You know,
so Harlem was always a spot.
But guys, this is all about the rebirth of Harlem. We are creating the new Harlem. Don't forget that, guys. The rebirth of Harlem.
So Leslie Stone, ball is in your court now. Thank you, man. You can stay as long as you can, but if you have to go, I understand.
I'm going to run because I want to be on time.
I understand. You got a presentation. Yeah, I know. You know, that's not always what you, when you talk about jazz artists, sometimes that's not always the focal point. But nevertheless, thanks, man. We'll have you back to give an update after all of this is over.
Peace, everybody.
Take care.
Dekota.
Dekota Pippins, Late Light Jazz. Leslie Stone is, I think, one of the most knowledgeable people on this whole issue of cannabis and the different forms of fashion, whether it's the economic development, the community use, the all of the different things that we read about. Leslie has done it. She's a Harlem girl, but then she went to California on us.
I nosedive in.
You know, and got so deep into it, she turned her last name to Stone, which I thought was interesting. I was like, who the hell is Leslie Stone? You know, and then I see, oh, I know. You know, I won't reveal your real name because I'll let you go with your front name here. But Leslie Stone is appropriate because the sister has so much knowledge, and we've been talking, and with the tourism board, we understand from other, and Leslie is the person who can talk about it, how tourism has blossom in the states that legalize recreational cannabis, because people come and they want to see the different places and the like. And when you start to talk about jazz and cannabis and all of those things come together, along with the fact that the state now is looking to bring more blacks to New York State as far as travelers, we're in a good time at this point. But tell listeners a little bit about yourself, Leslie, and we'll get into some of the other more current stuff in a moment. But I want people to know who you are.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Leslie Stone. I've been in the industry for about almost 10 years now, known as the Queen of Cannabis. I wear the head as the Queen of Cannabis because I've chosen to explore cannabis on the medical side and also on the business side, because once again, it was an emerging industry. when I first embarked on this journey, and it still is in certain states. But at the same time, legalization is here, and now it's more normalized as we're seeing more and more states become legal. So I had taken on the initiative to really educate the masses, or most importantly, to destigmatize, because I myself learned a lot about the cannabis industry when I went into California to work over there, and it was so much I learned that I did not know being on the East Coast, and I realized that there was a huge gap when it comes to understanding cannabis as a medicine and also as a legalized industry. So it was at that moment I decided that I wanted to be the person, one of the go-tos in this industry that would disseminate information, but most importantly to destigmatize it because of all the taboo and all the wrong information and just the reefer madness and everything that's been attached to the Control One substance. And that's why I became the queen of cannabis. I've traveled the nation for the last 9 years consecutively, fully immersed into this business. I've worked throughout the supply chain from cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, retail. I have a strong brand presence, as you see, Leslie Stone, that's the brand. And it's just an exciting time to be a woman of color helping to move the industry forward, but most importantly, empower our people economically and ensuring that they reap some of the fruits from legalization.
Well, again, Leslie, you have been doing this for some time, and I know that we've been talking about this for some time. Now, I think we are in a position where we can actually start to implement some of the things that we were talking about that probably was not possible because of the laws, the legalization, and all of that as it relates to New York. One of the things that I value with you is that you've seen the mistakes that other places have made. You've been there, and as far as on both sides, on the government side, and as far as the people. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you have seen and where you think New York may be at this point?
Well, New York is currently in a stage where it's known as the Wild Wild West. And what does that mean? Well, the Wild Wild West was just that, pretty much anything goes, everything was happening. And then at some point, things get taken over, orders conducted. So New York is right now in that cross sectional. It's very cross sectional right now because it's still very embryonic in legalization. So it's kind of moving away from the black market, which would never go away, but definitely being, let's just say, it's being abolished now more so. And what does that mean now? What that means right now, New York State is currently in the position where there's going to be a lot of enforcement. And that's where people are going to really have to have the necessary understanding, information to really navigate the landscape. Because what does that mean? That means potentially incarcerations. That means big ticket fines. That means a lot of people could potentially, go out of business if they're doing unethical business practices. So there's a lot that comes with it that will now start to be addressed. Like before, you could make mistakes and get away with it. Now you no longer will be able to.
And, it's one of everything has a yin and yang component to it. There have been a lot of controversy as it relates to dispensaries, coming into certain parts of the community, Harlem being one of them. And one of the things that I was able to see just by going to the ones that had been opened, it's a different type of a person that goes to a dispensary. When I said different type, is one that seems to be more knowledgeable, more focused on what they want and what they don't want. I think there's an education component now more than ever, so that there can be a lot more educated, different types of people to understand what that means.
Well, I mean, you're correct about that, Tony. What it is, what we call the sophisticated buyer.
Right.
See, if we rewind the hands, we can go back 2-3 years ago, and no one, when they purchased marijuana, would say, "I want a sativa or indica." It was just not said. But see, now has been disseminated, so people begin to understand it a little more scientifically. So now they're saying things like, you know what, I want a sativa. You know, they're asking questions such as how many milligrams. So, and this is where you want the economy or the consumers to go, because once again, this is now about providing safe medicine, right? Or a safe product because of it being regulated. See, regulatory is what's really going to throw the monkey wrench into the wild, wild west. And it's going to begin to, calm the waters. It's going to start to, shift out a lot of the black market. Now, black market will always exist.
It's going to always be there. I mean, just like the numbers,
right.
You're not going to get rid of it. However, the more educated you are, the better you are able to take advantage of the health benefits of cannabis.
Well, I think what happens is it allows you to be able to make the proper decisions. And because it is now in an industry that has a lot of complexity, a lot of knowledge, now we're talking about cannabis as a plant species, and we're talking molecules and atoms and milligrams and dosage and dollars. So we're not saying, give me a joint, let's get high.
and that's where the health and relation, I mean, there, whether it's CB, because that was legalized some time ago. Actually, the Trump administration. Matter of fact, I have said to people when they looked at me crazy, I said, it's going to be the Republicans who legalize cannabis for the United States. It probably won't be the Democrats, because they'll probably be too afraid. The Republicans see the money. Matter of fact, many of the former speaker is in the cannabis.
Exactly. Quite a few of them already crossed over into the arena.
But I think understanding the difference, when you go into a legalized store, it's a new education. I mean, there are plants that give you energy. There are plants that allow for you to relax. There are plants that you use when you want to study. There are plants that you use if you want your high blood pressure to be lower. I mean, the idea here is that there is now time to do that type of research, and it probably won't really go into full swing until like Jamaica and Canada, when it becomes legalized and taken off of that crazy, category that is in as far as being a number one. It has none of those issues that relate to it.
It has been decriminalized already. It's decriminalized. It's no longer control one substance. But what we're fighting for right now is for federal legalization. Like, that's the next level, and I believe it's going to occur. I see it happening a little more sooner than later. I know that we're kind of like, right now we're kind of experiencing a slightly like a gridlock, or there's a little opposition there. But see, what we all know when it comes to the American economy, that we're a capitalist society. Mm-hmm. We're based on capitalism, and there's just too much cash in this crop to allow it to not harvest at this point. You understand? So
it's
and everyone's fully aware of it. Like the states that have taken it upon themselves to do the legalization have reaped the fruits of of the monetary rewards tremendously. When you look at taxation and things of that nature, it has really brought in a lot of money. And we're, the economy's in a deficit, so we're looking for new ways. And then most importantly, what I think people don't take into consideration is that we are in a different time period as a civilization. And we're now in the 21st century. And if you really look back and pay attention post-COVID, the world has completely changed. And we have to pretty much adapt to this new living society that we have. And that now entails a lot of things that we once knew don't exist. Like a lot of these retail chains, they're going out of business because there's so much new things coming to the forefront. And those new things really consist of a lot of cannabis business throughout the United States or throughout the world at this point. I worked on some initiatives in other states, once again, being first to market, going first to set up operations, leading the industry. Like I tell people, this is what cannabis looks like now. Get used to it.
And it's interesting because it's really kind of coming full circle. Yes, we are in the 21st century, but it was never about cannabis or what we call marijuana with the THC, which comes from the Mexican issue, but that's another story. But the idea of hemp and how it could be used for so many industrial platforms, that's what created this reefer madness thing, because the robber barons didn't want hemp to get too popular because it would cut into the paper and the oil and all of that production.
Well, I believe, and you've hit the nail right on the head. Hemp is the most versatile commodity in the world. And we're not just discovering this. This has been known for many, many, many years.
In Kemet.
Yeah. And it's been known, and it's also been exercised. Like they used it for fuel, they used it for clothing, they used it for textile. They know the different applications. And I truly believe, being in industry and learning what I've learned to this point, I truly believe that this was done intentionally, like you said, to prevent this type of wealth from spreading. But also, I think it was also done a lot to, once again, marginalize people of color, because the one thing I have been able to really nail down and understand and learning about the history of cannabis and how it's evolved and with reefer madness is this, that during that time of reefer madness, a lot of, we had just came out of slavery. So a lot of slave masters had given slaves a lot of land. We were land rich, a lot of us, because of being free from slavery. So those of us that were land rich could also become cash crop rich. And I believe a lot of that was done intentionally to prevent us, once again, from monetizing off that crop.
Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting that you say that, because during World War II, they had used those tactics to put hemp into a position where you could not farm it. But hemp was so crucial in the uniforms, the parachutes. The Declaration of Independence was made out of hemp paper. The Columbus sail was made out of hemp. But when the U.S., got rid of all of the hemp farming, based on what you were saying, I'm sure, they would have to go to Japan to get the hemp-made materials. When the Japanese found out that they were going to Japan to get the hemp, made parachutes and all of that stuff, they stopped it, which meant that they had to pass a new law in America that revise the hemp farming until the war was over, and then they knocked it back. But that's, what you're saying is so much on time as to why that happened.
Yeah, I truly believe that now. Like I said, the more that I began to understand the history of the plant and the whole criminalization of this, I really believe that it was once again done to prevent certain people of color, from monetizing off the cash crop, because once again, it has always been known as cash crop.
That's an interesting, but the unfortunate situation is people in general have been put in a position where the miseducation has been harmful to their health. The LaGuardia study, which allowed for understanding that this plant was not the devil plant, you know. And then Nixon even had a study which came out with the same situation, but it was too convenient to demonize this plant to put blacks and people who were anti-war marchers in prison. You know, they couldn't not do it because of freedom of speech, but they could say, "Well, you got to do it. You got to go to jail." You know,
You're right.
that was the reason.
And actually, the Harlem Renaissance played a lot in the Reefer Madness because of, it really started with entertainers. The whole Reefer Madness mayhem was about black entertainers, jazz musicians, mostly musicians, having access to the powerful plant and sharing this plant with, white women and things of that nature and become, they didn't want that to happen. And they said that, our black men was using this drug to rape white women, and they kind of once again criminalized and made it something very, very bad, and really put the stigma on the African American man as the person who used this, who got very deranged and angry and sexual and all these very negative connotations.
Reefer Madness, if you go crazy.
That's untrue. And then once they did that, they created those characteristics, and then they put those characteristics around the white woman and said, the African American entertainers are now pursuing white women when they're on drugs and offering drugs to white women.
And then it became part
and
of the
some in
legal
Cotton Club, right up in the Cotton Club.
Mm-hmm. And so what are you doing now, Leslie? I know that we're talking about creating some programs for educating people, but what are some of the things that you're now working on, and how can people get involved with it?
Well, right now it's more about helping people to be a part of this industry. For those that want to play a role, like now's the time you have to conduct yourself properly, and you have to be able to comply to the laws. Now, here's the problem. A lot of people don't even know what the laws are. Right? So, and that's where I feel like in this type of adventure, because cannabis is a highly regulated industry. Now, what does that mean? Industries that are highly regulated is like banking. These are industries that normally, there's a lot of risk involved. There's a lot of money involved. So that's why they're so regulated, because they want to prevent things from happening, like, scandals and just a lot of things. You're dealing with human safety. You're talking about giving people stuff to eat and drink, and you have to worry about liability of that. So there's so many variables to a legalized industry when it comes to cannabis. So that's where people now that are getting into this industry in New York and all emerging states, not just New York, but especially as a state just becomes legal or goes adult use and medicinal. There's so many laws and legalities and compliance. Now, what does that mean to a person who's never owned a business or who doesn't understand a highly regulated industry? Because let's just say a small business owner, if you run a regular business, say you open a clothing store won't have to deal with half the things you have to deal with to try to open a cannabis business. So a lot of people think they can operate a cannabis business because they have operated a business and that they have a lot of transferable skills, yes, but there's a lot that they don't know. And the things that they don't know will cost them a lot of money or their business or potentially jail time.
So one of the things that you do is to work as a consultant to certain individuals who are looking at getting into the business so that they can understand some of the loopholes that might occur. But one of the other things that I have been able to understand, and I know that you have talked about this also, is that the industry has so many different types of options, whether it's in marketing, whether it's in accounting, whether it's in the legal areas, whether, there are many, many different types of components that could be attached to this I think it might have been you or so. It says like sprinkling dust. Wherever the dust lies, something can grow
Right.
from.
I tell people just whatever you do, add cannabis to it because it's legal. And that's once again trying to open the minds of individual because most people when they think about legalized cannabis, the only thing they really think about is growing. I mean, I believe now it's shifted. Like at first, you talk to anyone in New York, everybody wanted to have a grow facility. I believe the mentality has shifted from grow to now a dispensary, right? Between grow, dispensary, and lounges, that's the only thing you really hear New Yorkers talk about who really don't know much about the industry, right? They'd say, oh, I want to get in. I want to have a dispensary. I want to have a grow, or I want to open a lounge. And the reason they're saying that is because it's pretty much like a copycat effect. They don't know anything else. They haven't really digest that it's an industry. Now, what does an industry consist of? It consists of legal, it consists of finance, it consists of banking, it consists of a lot of things. So a lot of people haven't been able to grasp the concept. They're still looking at cannabis in more of a not in a macro view, but in a micro view. They're seeing a very small, minuscule components to it, or just things that they're familiar with, right? So the thing I'm here, number one, is to consult people, and most importantly, to teach people to avoid pitfalls, because you can fall very quickly in this industry, and you fall fast and furious. And I tell people you bleed out. And what do you mean by bleed out? I mean you go red fast. And red fast in a small business or a startup is not good because that means you can't see your profit. You're always in the red. And cannabis can keep you like that because of the regulatory and all of the different compliance. There's a lot that comes with it. And if you don't know, you can lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in inventory easily overnight.
One of the things, and I pose this question a lot when I go to some of the Harlem Business Alliance meetings, is if there is this push to make sure that those who suffer the most get an opportunity to take advantage of what now becomes legal, and we talk about the thousands of dollars, all the things that are necessary to get a license or to get into the business, how can those people, the people on the block, the ones who have been, put into this position, it almost sounds like the same thing. If you don't have money, you can't make money.
Well, this requires two things. It requires money and it requires knowledge. Now, here's what happens. Like, a lot of people don't understand who've never operated a real business before. Like I tell a lot of my brothers, those brothers are very street savvy and they're very good at what they do. Like, they know how to make their money from, manipulating it the way they have done for many, many years. But I can also tell you that a lot of those brothers right now, they're suffering. They're suffering. And they see a disruption in their cash flow like they've never seen before. And they don't understand how and what to do to kind of get themselves back on course.
Because brothers and sisters, so we need to put that.
Well, yeah, brothers and sisters. Yeah, let's not. Yes. So I speak to a lot of people that reach out to me, and because I don't know if it was on one of maybe your program I went on. I said that at some point, a lot of the drug dealers, or shall I say, illicit operators, black market, they're going to lose their customers. The customers are going to walk past them into these stores, and that's what's happening right now. So it has really disrupted the cash flow of the black market. Like I said, not that it has eliminated, but it's definitely causing serious disruption. Not only will it disrupt the black market, it's going to disrupt tobacco, it's going to disrupt alcohol. It's disrupting a lot of verticals right now. And the pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, and big pharma. So make no mistake, cannabis is the disruptor, okay? Now, but what does that mean for these guys? What it means, like I tell my brothers, and this is what I've been preaching, Tony, for a while. My thing was to prepare you for success. So in order to succeed now, you have to be prepared. Now, see, one of the biggest things, which, I can't reveal at this moment, but people got to understand, what is their value? What's the value do you add? What do you have that they want? right? You got to understand the value proposition that when you're offering somebody, like when you're doing business, when a business table deals are being done, it's mutually beneficial. So you got to make sure that whenever you're doing something with someone, is really mutually beneficial. But what's challenging for a lot of people is that it sounds good. It sounds real good. But when you lack business acumen and you don't understand, something that sounds good could be very disastrous. So you really need to have yourself surrounded by people that know how to protect you and prevent you from pitfalls. And what happens is, a lot of times in this industry, because it's so new, a lot of times it's the blind leading the blind, regardless of a title. And that's where it also gets challenging. I've had to tell people, like I often say to a person, you have a cannabis lawyer. And I say, okay, that's great. But here's what I can tell you about certain attorneys, and rightfully so. It's not a takeaway, but just making people to understand how unknown and new this industry is. Because see, when I first came back to New York from California, I spoke to many high professional people, lawyers, accountants, and brokers, my network. They couldn't answer any of my questions. They couldn't answer not one question. As a matter of fact, I helped them to understand. And I explained to them, listen, you have to understand you're not getting it. And what they weren't getting is that you're not going to reference another case. So you got to remember, a lot of lawyers, they got to go reference a case first. There's one case that set the foundation for it. That hadn't been done yet in New York. It still hasn't been done in certain areas of New York. So there's still a lot of unknown and a lot of uncertainty. So a lot of times you can have people that's kind of leading, but they don't have the real expertise because they themselves are new. A lot of times I sit in many places and I hear people talk with big titles, but they're conveying misinformation. But if someone don't know, they can never be challenged, right? So like I tell them, sometimes people, if you don't know the questions to ask, you don't know if that person's right or wrong. But it sounds good. And it comes from this person with this title. So we have to be careful with that right now. And this is why it becomes a wild, wild west. Because people jump in. And let me also tell you, some of the biggest people that go down in this industry comes from the law enforcement field. Because those are some of the people that get into it first. Lawyers and judges. So a lot of times there's a lot of unethical things being done, and sometimes it's not even done intentionally. Sometimes it's done obliviously because no one knew, but no one took the time to find out what was right, and then something comes back to bite them later on.
So how can people reach you, Leslie? And plus your website is a very educational component in and of itself. So give the people the contact information for you.
Well, I can be reached at Let's Talk Cannabis. You can follow me online. The website is letstalkcannabiz.tv. So that's letstalkcannabiz.tv. You can also follow me on social media, Let's Talk Cannabis. In addition to that, we also have another platform called Golden Hands, which is a senior educational platform that you can go to as well, and that's goldenhands.com. Just Google us. We're all online, different platforms. In addition to that, we're going to be launching a lot of different, over the summer months coming up, we're going to have a lot of different educational forums throughout the 5 boroughs in New York. Once again, just disseminating information and helping to prepare people. It's all about preparedness because it's preparation for success.
Well, again, we're looking to have more of your work, especially in Harlem, listed on our goharlem.org site so that people can know how to attend various events and the like. I told you I want to be the poster child on the Golden Hands, because seniors are missing out.
Well, not on my watch. Not on my watch. Well, the one thing I can say, and it's very disheartening, and once again, identifying a gap. But this has been my specialty area. This is my niche area, and I'm so proud to be the person that's kind of, spearheading. And also, I'm passionate because of my mother, who was an aging person that suffered from a lot of afflictions and illnesses, that was on a tremendous amount of prescription drugs. So I personally have my own testimony through my mom, who was near and dear to me. You know, no one's more important to you than your mother, most of us. And not only that, watching her, but also, you know, for almost 5 years. It's been about since 2018, which is when my mother passed away, and I really immersed myself into this Golden Hands initiative to work with aging adults. And I have worked with aging adults in about 10 states right now. Golden Hands really operates with different individuals and entities when it comes to that. And it is remarkable. You understand? And I don't know if you saw recently on Gail King about a week or two ago, they was talking on the morning show Gail's on that we're living much longer lives now, right?
Right.
Okay. So here it is. And we're living longer. We got to be able to take better care of ourselves, right? So
Right.
although we're dealing with a lot of degenerative things that we can't really help, however, based on diet, you know, what we put in our bodies, and most importantly, the medicines that we're taking or what we think is healing our bodies, because prescription drugs is really not healing. It's really doing more damage. And I believe that's one of the reasons why we're going so, you know, like I think that's why they're allowing cannabis to come back to the forefront as the plant of power, this powerful plant medicine, because we see how harmful a lot of this pharmaceutical drugs are. So we have to come up with something if we want to keep our people alive, right? So cannabis
Well,
is
you know, that's the positive way of looking at it. However, the pharmaceutical companies, big pharma, is until they can figure out how they can incorporate the cannabis in there, which they're already doing to some point.
Hold on, let me say this. See, Tony, they have already been into this business. See, big pharma, you know, there's a prescription drug called Marinol. Marinol is a synthetic form of cannabis. They already knew this. They made their own synthetic they won't give it to us naturally. So this is what I'm trying to tell you. They know. And right now they're creating more things just like everyone else is. Like all your GTPs, the pharma, tobacco, they're already in cannabis. Every sector is in cannabis already. Okay. Tobacco, they already have cannabis cigarettes. They're about to launch that very soon. Okay. Big Pharma, they got some things underway. Okay, that they're going to be dealing with cannabis now that it's legal. They're going to get their piece of it. They're cashing in the crop as well.
Of course, and which is why, you know, the legalization is going to come about. But the important thing,
alcohol. You see all this stuff with alcohol now. All these new alcohol, cannabis drinks, beer. Look, they're in. They're all in.
Well, the way that we have to look at this green rush, as we call it, is to make sure people like you, Leslie, are available to those who, in whatever form or fashion. And as I said before, you don't necessarily have to sell it. You just put cannabis on behind whatever you're doing, you know, and you'll be in the industry. Leslie, thank you so much. We're going to have you back. We want you to have a place in our marketing for GoHarlem.org, part of the Harlem Tourism Board, doing some educational stuff, but especially, you know, and I'm saying this personally, the Golden Hands, you know, for seniors. I'll be 76 in June, and people say, "Wow, you know, what are you doing?" You know, I got to tell you now, it has been part of my regimen that has allowed for me to be able to be who I am.
Tony, first of all, I want to tell you, I would be honored because I know you and who you are and what you exemplify. I could just for everyone out there listening, this man has always been about holistic healing. Okay. I'm just as much of a fan of his as he is of I. I respect who he is and the things that he's brought to the Harlem community. And he's also been instrumental in giving me support and allowing me to have a voice and just being someone to, inspire and support other initiatives. So whatever I could do to help you, Tony, because you've always been a supporter of me. I commend you on just bringing some of the holistic practices that you have to Harlem, to bring this wealth of knowledge and this spiritual guidance, because a lot of people don't understand the spirituality of this as well. So there's a spiritual part to it that, you have really embodied as a person, and you exemplify it. So it would be an honor to have you as a face for Golden Hands.
Well, listen, we will talk about it. Thank you so much for your time. And we're about up with our time. But thanks, Leslie, for what you're doing. We'll be talking. Obviously, we have to start looking at how we can incorporate Golden Hands in particular, but cannabis education in general. And I believe that's something that's important for the and we didn't talk about it. We'll do it at another time. It's a major tourism opportunity too. So we'll talk about those things.
Well,
Thank
there's a
you.
lot of opportunities here.
Thank you so much, Leslie Stone. Let's talk cannabis. Uh, we should make sure that we educate ourselves. It's very important that we do that. Um, there's an industry it is still growing. And there's so many ways, but the more important thing, not even going into business, the more important thing is that as it relates to health, a lot of people have run away from this understanding because of a lack of understanding. But studies, I mean, if you go to, I have an article coming out this Thursday in the Holland Community News, hollandcommunitynews.com, or either you can pick it up free in many of the stores in the area. And it'll be in the Brooklyn, Queens, and Bronx Community News is also about some of the history and some of the things that we were just talking about. It's about education. And of course, when you hear 420 on Thursday, it's not just about people getting high. It's about creating an understanding of an industry that might very well be important for your overall well-being. So this is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology Systems. Thank you, Soul City, for allowing us for this moment. And of course, WACR, we still promote WACR, even though we have the opportunity now to do both a radio and a visual. So those are great things that are happening to us. Take care, and hopefully we will see each other next week.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.